Hello everyone, so this will be my first build of a World War Toons tank. If you watch my channel or if you look at my playlists, you'll find that probably half of my videos are about tuned cars. And so I've actually grown to like tuned vehicles more than the realistic cars that I collect, because basically the realistic cars always have a problem. There's some sort of build quality issue or a poor design decision. But when it comes to things that aren't realistic, I don't really care, right? So I find it more enjoyable to collect things that are not realistic than realistic. Hopefully that makes sense. So turns out this is a video game, World War Toons, and then they teamed up with Meng, which is a model kit company. Meng makes realistic looking tank models and other types of vehicles and stuff like that. Even I think figures. But we're going to do an M5 Stuart. I know there's at least 20 different tanks that Meng does. And then there's also like 4 different ones from Trumpeter. And I've ordered one of those and a whole bunch more of these. So if you like tuned tanks, you might want to stay tuned into this channel. Okay, so this is number 12 in the lineup, and it says 14 and above for people as far as how old you might want to be making this thing. But I think it's really basic inside. It's a really cool illustration. Unfortunately, I don't have room to save such things. And then a totally different illustration here. It looks like a CAD rendering. And then here's some World War Toons information if you want to play the game. M5 Stuart. Okay, and then I guess they have their own paints. This came out in 2020. It's still available. I bought this off AliExpress, I think. And you can buy almost all of them there. So I don't think they're limited or anything like that, because you can still buy the very first one. You know, and they're up to 20 already. So, alright, let's look at this. I don't know what that would be. Rokovan? Oh, maybe that's the software developer for the video game. Let's see. There's a little piece of paper there. Well, that's not going to help us out, right? Okay, so we just got a little bag here. I'm curious around how big these are. I don't know if they're supposed to be around 135 scale or 148 scale, which are the two common smaller scales for tanks. I used to actually have the 16 scale Tamiya RC tanks. Those things are awesome. If you have space, those things are great, and you can actually battle each other with those. They have an infrared battle system. Okay, so the illustration carries across here, and then there are all the pieces if you want to check on the runners. And it's nice that it has decals. That'll make the thing look a little more realistic, which is funny to say about a tuned vehicle. And like everyone else says on YouTube, very clear instructions. Although some of them, you really do want to follow the instructions from what I see. There's a channel you'll run into if you search these things. Oddball something. Oddball and some numbers is his channel. And I think he's reviewed all of these things. And he knows a lot about tanks. I do not. So I'm not even going to talk about this. Maybe later I'll talk about the M5 Stuart if I read Wikipedia. It's interesting, this text is also in Russian, which obviously maybe a lot of Russians like making model kits. Okay, well, we can breeze through that. It gives you some idea of some paint liveries. I'm going to just go with an olive drab. Yeah, so here's some color references and all that stuff. Okay, well, let's see how big this is. Oh, well, it's actually a lot smaller than I thought it would be, which is good. I'm a small model collector because I can collect more stuff. I don't want to have a big tank. But I'm more curious about like the size of a figure, if I can find cartoon figures, and that would have to be a really small figure, just based on these hatches. Like, really, really small. So I'm gonna guess maybe this is around 148 scale. Roughly. Well, we'll see. So there's the decals in there. And then, yeah, the hull, let's look at the quality of the plastic. It's not bad. It actually has like a nice, texture to it. It's a very fine texture, but it's not just super smooth, you know. So they're trying to mimic, I guess, a little bit of a sandblasted finish or something. Yeah. Okay. You can see some lines. Maybe, I'm not sure if the camera's picking it up, but I can see some details in the plastic. But it's not bad, actually. Like I see in Bandai model kits, a lot of the waviness in some of their parts, so you're kind of forced to paint those. But this one, actually, I don't see a real desire to have to paint it. It might be easier to just put it all together and spray it with a matte clear coat, and then it might be fine. I don't see any weird waviness. Oh, but hold on here. As I say that, here I can see right there, you can see the 6 ribs, you know, how it cooled off. It's a little glossier because oh, but you know, if this is the side you see, you wouldn't even see this, so it doesn't matter, most likely. Alright, going into the turret. Yeah, I don't see any weird wavy bad molding creases and stuff. Maybe a tiny bit there, but a lot of these tank turrets were actually cast and they would have some sort of defects in them. So, you know, I am just probably going to put this together. And then I'll clear coat it, and then I'll just do maybe some washes to make it look older. Nice, nice. I hate making models, guys. Alright, I don't hate making models. I just don't love it, you know. I would much rather have this thing finished, already painted. And frankly, I'd actually like it to be half the size, so I could collect even more of them. Alright, well anyways, you probably want to, I'm going to fast forward me clipping this all off and building it, so if you want to watch in fast forward and slow it down or make it even faster, you can. And then I'll come back when it's finished. Okay, let's learn a little bit about this tank here. I'm reading Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt. This is part of the M3. It was derived from the M3 tank. These are classified as light tanks. You can see it next to a Sherman here, which is a medium tank. So it is quite small. I mean, look at this person, right? So this is a small tank. And the M3 and the M5, they made over 22,000 of them. And it was produced between 1941 to 1944. Okay. It had armor from 9.5 to 50.8 millimeters thick. It had the main gun was 37 millimeters. It had a 220 horsepower Cadillac engine. It doesn't say what kind. And then the horsepower per ton was only 13.2-ish. So only 13 horsepower to move a ton. But I'm assuming these things had a lot of torque and were geared a certain way. But it could actually go 36 miles per hour or 58 kilometers per hour on a road, so that seems pretty good. You'll notice it also has rubber pads on its tracks, so it wouldn't tear up a road. So we learned a little bit about the M5 today, because I didn't know any of this. Let's talk about the build itself, and then we'll just show off the model. It was pretty straightforward to put together. The instructions are good. There's only really one confusing part. These little toe rings here. If you look from the top view, I was putting them in backwards. And then eventually I figured out I had to flip it around. Because I clipped them all off the screws, I forgot what part number was what. So if you don't want to run into that problem, build it part number by part number. But eventually, if you just look at the orientation, you can see it's kind of flatter on this side here, and it's angled on this side. And then from the front view, it's flatter on the top than it is on the bottom. Alright, so that's how they're supposed to go in. This is a pretty well-designed model kit. You don't really need glue, in my opinion. I guess if you dropped it from a bookshelf, maybe a part might fall out. But in general, everything is a well-done friction fit. Very much like a Bandai Gundam. It's not, maybe it's like 90% as good as a Bandai kit, which is like the best in my opinion. So it's very good. The only thing I'm not a big fan of are the rubber tracks. I guess it's because these are aimed for kids. You can actually spin this thing around. But what I did is I used these Hobby Mio markers here. This is a gunmetal one, and I did this all over the side. And then I thought I would try to protect the paint, so I clear coated it with rattle can, clear coat. And all of the stuff just hardened, and basically all this paint flaked off because it's a rubber track. I kind of wish it was a plastic track like real model kits have, so they would have more detail, because it's quite plain looking, But I guess if you want to play with it, you can. So anyways, this is just raw exposed acrylic again. It's no clear coat. Only the tank itself has clear coat over it. Another gripe I had is the decals. They are so tightly spaced together on the decal sheet. You really have to have some really small, precise scissors so you can cut out the decal and cut away the number, because the number becomes, the reference number would also become a decal, and that could mess things up. So I kind of wish they spread out the decals a little bit more, a slightly bigger piece of paper, maybe even have 2 sets of decals, like an alternate version. This is basically the only version you get, S37, and that sort of, I don't know if that's a registration number or what. Okay, yeah, I did glue some parts just because it's habit, but I'm not sure if you truly need to, especially if you're going to clear coat the thing, which I did do. This turret will come off here. It's got a little index there. So I basically put it together. I painted these little bits, all these little bits separately, put them on the thing, and then I I had some black paint wash here, Tamiya paint wash for the vents, and then I paint washed the whole thing with this panel liner. So that's what the brown tone is pretty much. And then I tried using these pastels from Alexan. But these things are really dry pastels, you know. So basically, it's a powder, and powder doesn't really want to stick to a dry model. So I realized that you need to have something to make the powder stick. So I just used some powder. Eventually, I just put some panel liner down, and then I added the rust pigment here, for instance. Let me get a better light here. Yeah, so rust onto the cable and then there and all that stuff. So now it's like trapped because I ended up clear coating the whole thing again. So that's a mental note. I'm not sure if rust paint would be better. I kind of feel like it looks better as pigment because you can see, you know, there's much more of the pigment there than there, whereas paint, you would have to apply the paint repeatedly to get that same effect. One thing that's great that I've never used before is this mud stuff from Mr. Hobby. This is mud yellow, and it just a rough paintbrush, just dab it on there, and it, you know, becomes very three-dimensional because it is a paste. So unfortunately this is kind of expensive, but I think it's worth it because I don't think I could ever use this bottle my whole lifetime. I used a very small amount here in the back and stuff like that too. Okay, so, and then some building tool wise, you definitely have to have some Q-tips, and in particular these eyelash liners that I bought off AliExpress, because you can get into the really small details, you know, and remove stuff. So that's some of the tricks I would suggest. And then yeah, I didn't really even use much of the Vallejo paints here too much. I mostly just used this marker here. The window ports, I did use the black paint marker and then a blue metallic paint marker over it to give it a little bit of a different color instead of just being plain black. So besides the turret being able to move, the little gun here can go up and down a little bit, and then obviously you saw the tracks move and the wheels will move. That's about it, I believe, for the articulation. Nothing else. I drilled out this gun a little bit, and also that gun a little bit, and then this is either another gun port or a viewfinder maybe. I drilled a hole through that as well. The main gun I didn't bother modifying. Oh, one thing to note, these hatches are just kept on with this section here, just the top half of a loop, and they curve under. So they're very, very flimsy. So flimsy that I decided to just glue them shut, because I think if I tried to open it a few times, it'd probably break the piece, or if I drop the model, those hatches are going to just get lost. Right? So for this particular one, no open hatches. This is plastic, so, you know, if I drop the model, that's going to snap off. I'm not too concerned because the base is so wide, you can drill it out and maybe put a metal wire in instead. But just in case, I didn't glue that in place, so I can remove the base and drill it easier in the future, that is. Okay, let's look at some other things. So I really don't have much to even think about comparing this to, other than the 1/48 scale Votoms. Maybe this is 1/48 scale. These are some figures that came with the Votoms figure. This is the pilot and stuff like that. There's also a little pilot in there. So let's see how they would look in this. Yeah, I do feel like maybe this tank is 1/48 scale. I feel like that torso would be a good fit for that hatch had I actually not glued it together. So let's see here. Well, you know, though, because it's deformed, you know, you saw the picture earlier, a man would be standing kind of like that tall. So it's very deformed. I'm not sure if you could probably get away with 1/48 or 1/35 scale figures, because a 1/35 outside the tank might look proportionate. But if you're actually trying to get someone in the hatch, I think you're going to have to get like a 1/48 scale. Okay, So yeah, let's just pop this Votoms up here, which is a walking tank, by the way. I have a bunch of videos on these Actic Gear Votoms and some model kits by Bandai. And then I found one of these at a local toy shop. This is made by Bandai, and it's from some sort of Japanese cartoon franchise called Kinnikunamen or something, which might be either a wrestling cartoon or I don't know. All I know is this guy looks kind of military, and I guess he's still too big for this thing too, but oh well, it's gonna have to do for today. Let's just get that out of here. If I had to guess how long it took me to build this, physically putting all the parts together maybe took 2 hours because I was cleaning up all the parts, you know, the clippings and getting rid of the nubs. If you don't care about the nubs, you could put this thing together in probably less than an hour easily, maybe even 30 minutes, because there's probably only 30 parts. Yeah, 40 parts, I don't know. So it's pretty easy to put together, but obviously if you want it to look nice, yeah, I think it took like a good 4 to 6 hours just to do this basic weathering. I mean, I don't even have any paint chipping going on, or really any extra color washes or anything like that. So, but I don't really care about the M5 tank so much, you know. I just want to get introduced to this Meng World War Toons line, and I do think it's a pretty awesome line. So I'm gonna basically build a bunch more of these tanks, and maybe on some of the heavy tanks, maybe I'll put in some more effort. But yeah, it's pretty good, man. If you want a simple model kit or get an idea of how well designed model kits could be if you don't buy a Gundam, this is not a bad alternative. This is far simpler than most Gundam model kits. Okay, well, thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you in the next cartoon tank video. Bye now.